Hi there, everyone. This is the Writing for Starfinder panel, and we're gonna give you some tips and tricks on what you might be expected to write for us, and how you might get to do that thing that everyone wants to maybe do. And then we'll take some Q&A later on, and hope maybe some from some Twitch. We'll get the introductions out of the way. I'm Jason Keeley. I'm a developer for Starfinder, working primarily on the Starfinder adventure path. And to my right,
I'm Joe Piscini. I'm the lead designer for Starfinder.
And this way,
I'm Lou Pelizar. I'm an editor at Paizo, and I work on Starfinder sometimes.
Ooh. Hi, I'm Thurston Hillman, and I am the Starfinder Society developer.
And we've all freelanced for Paizo.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And probably I'm doing some freelance for Paizo right now, as we speak. That's what I'm writing right here. I'm getting that out of the way, these lull moments during the con. I don't have much to do.
Save your writing for gencon.
Save your writing for when you're not at home.
That's how you should do it. Yeah, that's the best thing to do with a con.
Tip number one.
Tip number one.
I think we could start by just sort of talking about like what it's like to when you write for Paizo and Starfinder, and what you might be expected of you, and that sort of thing. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay, thank you, Joe. There's
good.
I'm
I'm in awe here.
This is a consensus panel. I want to make sure I get everyone's opinion on everything. So, in general, what it's like to write for us is that once you have gotten through all the rigmarole, which we'll get through about sort of like getting in contact with us, and once you have an assignment, you have the assignment that we give you. We're not going to be asking you for pitches for specific things. Like, you don't come to us with like, I want to write an adventure that's set in X, Y, and Z. No, we will be giving you what we want from you. We'll mainly be giving you an outline, and now that outline will have some room for your creative freedom in it, of course, in terms of like, we want X number of feats or spells, and maybe pitch us some ideas. Or generally, often when I'm assigning stuff for Monster, the back of the Alien Archives, I'm like, I'm not sure. I got to fill 7 slots, and I need 4 of them for the adventure, but I don't know what to do with the other 3. And I'll be talking to my authors and my freelancers and be like, what do you got? I want something that's around CR this, and maybe it's either big or small or something like that, has this kind of theme. And I take pitches, and I pick out the ones I like and say, yeah, write that. Give me 500 words on that. But in general, you write what we tell you, god darn it.
Or else.
Or else, indeed. And no, indeed, that's important to keep in mind that we have pretty regimented books in terms of what we would know, what fits where, and we calculate out word count and that sort of thing. So if you go way under a word count or go way over a word count, or just basically write a bunch of stuff that we don't think is usable, we've got to fix that, and that takes our time, and it ticks us off, and you might never hear from us again.
Let's talk really quickly about word count.
Yes.
For y'all, what's an acceptable over or under for you? Because I get that question fairly regularly, and for me personally, it's 10% or so is not a big deal. Any more than that, you really want, and it depends on the length. I mean, 10% of a 30,000 word project is significant.
That would not
too
even
many
be that.
words short.
Exactly.
But something shorter, and over can be just as bad as under, because like you were saying, having to cut things can take just as much time as having to fill. So,
right.
Especially if you have lots of things to keep in mind, like structure and pacing and all these other things. So what are your, Thirsty and Jason, in terms of developing things?
Oh, I'm weird because I work solely in PDFs, so I don't have to copy fit these things. But I will say that 10% is about where I tend to look at assignments. Now, sometimes I will have authors. For example, if you've ever seen one of our big interactive specials, oftentimes we will assign those things, and the author will come back and be like, "So about this word count, can I go like several thousand words over because this thing is a spiraling behemoth?" And we go, "Yes, because we're doing kind of best guess on it." Now, that's very different for the type of assignments that I assign, because again, they're all PDFs. We don't have to worry quite as much of like hitting exact page counts. But when you are submitting as a freelancer, I always aim for around 5% is kind of my ideal goal.
Yeah, especially on the big things. Anything that's over 10,000 words, less than 10%, you want to be about on the 3 to 5% over under there.
Because in that case, if you're curious on numbers, like in a 10,000 word assignment, if you're 10% over, that can easily equate to 2 additional pages of content that. How do we take something else out?
Exactly. And everything you will have written will be fantastic, so it will be very difficult for us to cut it down to the word count we need to do. No one laughed at that. Okay.
Oh, I thought you were serious.
No, I was being 100% serious, of course.
I was like, oh, that's very nice.
Let's rewind. We've talked about
jumped right in.
How do you end up with an assignment?
Indeed, yes. How do you do that? You want to essentially. What happens is you might contact one of us. By email, right?
Very mysterious.
Very mysterious. You might get out your Ouija board.
Who knows?
You can send
panel.
Could be something happens. You get a phone call. You wake up in the middle of the night. So I am very punchy right now. Send us an email, right? Send us an email. Let us know the kinds of things you'd like to write. Are you into narrative? Do you like rules content more? Are you just looking to write a bunch about planar stuff, for instance? If you want to get that specific, we'll let you know if we have. And tell us what your experience is. Right? We need to know what you've done. If you have a CV or a portfolio or some things you can link to that we can read, all the better. If you want to send us a sample of something that's already been, sort of laid out, maybe edited, that's great.
Caveat.
Perfect.
Caveat on that. Yeah. Published material, please.
Yeah.
We cannot take anything that is unsolicited sent to us. This goes back to a previous point that Jason made, which is if you try to send us I've got this great scenario pitch, or I've written a 500-page campaign setting, here's my writing quality. We, for multiple reasons, one of them being a legal reason, we cannot read that, because if we were to read that and rejected that suggestion or offer, but maybe another one of our coworkers used a similar idea, we would open ourselves up to liability. So what we tend to look for is things that are published in an existing format. And that can be just, you got a blog spot and you put it online and there it is. Or something like Wayfinder or any of our third-party publishers. There's a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, that's sort of, I guess, another step back. We're gonna do this a real French film sort of way where we work backwards. It's a non-linear seminar.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. Sort of going to Wayfinder, which is now currently, I think, still accepting submissions for their next Starfinder themed issue, which is about the diaspora. And again, it's a great place to go there, and you can read some previous issues.
I thought you meant the diaspora. It seems real great, yeah.
Yeah, the diaspora's really great. It's awesome.
All kinds of asteroids.
With a bunch of weird stuff in it, and again, other third parties, you can contact them. We like to work with people who have been a little bit established if possible, and it doesn't have to be with Starfinder. It can be with other products, other game lines, for instance. But as long as it's proven that you can do the work, turn it in, and it gets made, and it looks good. It's something. We can work with you.
There are a lot of kinds of experience too, and we want to know which kinds you might have. So, what's your experience with Starfinder? Why are you talking to us? Are you talking to everyone who ever published anything, just shotgunning it, hoping for the best? That could work if you have a bunch of third-party experience. Do you have experience with third parties that are publishing Starfinder or other stuff? Pathfinder is a related system, first edition, and even second in some ways. So that's good to know. I always want to know what people's interest is, if they have any interest in specific parts of the setting of Starfinder. And then also your just non-RPG interests can be really relevant too. Like if you're an expert, if your day job is working well, I'll call someone out. Day job is working with lasers.
In organized play, we recently, a few months back, assigned a scenario because we had someone who was post-traumatic stress disorder, was somewhat of an expert in that field, and came to us and was talking about how they really wanted to talk about this subject, with the Starfinder Society, and you're putting these people through all this very traumatic stuff, and he really wanted to do a serious portrayal of that, and came to us with a great pitch at a convention just like this, and that was yeah, sure, we will try this out because you've given us some credentials, even though it wasn't gaming related, and it turned out really solid. So
yeah,
right, yeah. I mean, there's a reason that a bunch of the bug-themed things are written by me in Starfinder. So
bug lady, bug person,
bug queen,
so indeed, you can even if you find something that you have and you've written, you're very, very passionate about, and you can't find, say, a third party, publish it yourself. You can go and make a PDF that looks good pretty easly, and I think there's stuff like Scrivener or free stuff that you can find online that you can do layout with. You can buy some clip art even, that kind of thing, and we have the OGL, put all that legal text in there. There's information about how to do all that. If you want to get into great detail, you can ask one of us later. But do all that, you can put it on like drive-through or something like that, or even I forget if you can still do that on our website or not. But you can put it on online. I've sold this, and people are buying it, and we like to hear that. So.
I mean, Luis Loza, one of our, I say newer developers, but he's been there a long time now.
Like 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, he self-published just online a bunch of stuff.
Right.
That is totally valid. Like we want to see what you're able to do that works. And you, Thirsty mentioned Blogspot. It's legit. Like those are words in the world.
Exactly.
As long as they're like public and hey, we can access them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So sell it or don't sell it. Whatever you need, whatever you want to do with it. But get it out there. It's a lot of it is about getting out there, doing some of the work, showing us that you've done work, and then we can trust you with our work that we desperately need to get done because we have so much of it.
And that's another kind of experience that's really any kind of deadline oriented stuff. Anytime you can prove someone needed me to do something in a certain amount of time and I did it, even though I could have taken longer and made it better, or anytime there was a chance that I could have dropped the ball and not done it. If you have things you can point to from any field, really, to say like, I'm consistent in doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll respond to that if you want.
Please respond.
Yes. Being realistic about what you can do also is really important. We try not to put, if we're trying a new author out, we don't give them too much of a huge thing, although there are scenarios for organized play. They're pretty hefty, I think, but we do try authors out on that. Thirsty can talk more about that, of course. But know your own limits. And we do talk to each other at the office, but there are a lot of us and a lot of projects, and it's possible that you might get something from me, something small from me, and something small from Jason, and then all these things start overlapping, and then you get overwhelmed.
All these projects end up on a person, and they can't take more work.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
but for real, if I have maybe assigned a few things to someone and I want to maybe later on assign to someone else, like, no, I just got this big project from the Pathfinder line or something, I don't want to take that on right now. That you get 1,000,000 points at that point, and I'm like, okay, you'll get the next very next thing that you can take because you've proven yourself to be yourself. Or even if it's something like, I'm not comfortable writing that, like maybe there's some article about a particular type of creature. Like, I'm not really comfortable writing about that type of creature, and that's great. I want to hear, if you know your limitations, that means I don't have to find them out. We don't have to find them out accidentally and mess up all of our schedules and whatnot.
Totally understandable to feel like, oh, this is my only chance to, like I have to take anything that I can get, and that I totally get that. And letting people down feels bad too, just in general. But we always talk about like, and they said no. It's like because that saves us so much trouble, so much time. It's like the best thing you can say right after. I can't do it.
There will always be more stuff to work on too.
Yes.
So
always more stuff.
I have a folder in my email that says freelancer interest, where I will go through and grab people who are interested in writing for us. Then I have a second one that's right above that. That's has declined, and that is a great folder because it's entirely like, this person declined because they had a very good reason. And usually you'll say, but I can take work at this point again, and yes, you will get work at that point because you've really shown how you're treating this like it is a job, like it is a professional thing you are doing, and you're saying, no, I am not capable of that. What we end up with a lot of times are people who take on massive assignments and can sink real fast, and it causes us way more problems than just like, hey, I couldn't take that. Okay, that gives us time to find someone who could at that point.
Right. And not to undermine like not taking too much stuff, but if you like so happen to find yourself being overwhelmed, stay in communication with the devs, please. Like, it's so much better to know like, oops, I messed up, like I'm gonna be late or something, and like actually letting someone know rather than like dropping off the face of the planet and then like turning something in 6 months late, like.
So we're going back to what we've said a few times here and there. We talk to each other a lot, probably too much. And if you're in this beginning email phase, I don't have anything for you, but you've got this awesome resume. But I know that Jill might have something. So I might pass your name on to Joe. And indeed, and it works both ways. If it turns out you're a jerk for some reason, none of you here, of course, we'll talk to them. This person was kind of a jerk, and then you might. It's not like an officially blacklisted kind of thing, and people have different opinions about the way people act and that sort of thing. But the word will get around. And
that doesn't really happen that much, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it's true, but it's just like we end up working with really great people. We're pretty lucky.
We're pretty lucky.
Yeah, and it's true that everyone who develops text that comes in has preferences. Like some people are like totally fine redoing stat blocks all the time. Like, this person cannot do stat blocks, but I don't care. I like redoing those and I can do them quickly. Whereas other people hate writing to fill flavor, so someone that's consistently like turning in less flavor than they're supposed to, it's just more difficult to work with them. Or even just like personal communication styles, nothing like even overtly bad necessarily, but just like any relationship, it's a working relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Some people might not want to be contacted by the freelancer every stage of writing, every week. Here's an update, right. And some people might want that. So that's sort of something we don't necessarily 100% spread around and blacklist you because you emailed me 3 extra times and I liked, and now you're never going to get work again. No, that's the sort of it'd be like a big thing. You have to be a big reason, like for instance, perhaps maybe like dropping off the face of the earth without letting us know. We're going to be a little wary to use you again. Not necessarily we're never going to, but we're going to be like we're going to. Raise an eyebrow, that sort of thing. And now to move on to, you've gotten the assignment, hooray! You got a contract.
Congrats.
You know what you're doing. You've got it outlined, hopefully, at this point, if your developer isn't asleep at the wheel. And you know what you're doing. You start writing it. That's great. There are a lot of, and this is getting into, everyone has their own way of writing, right? You might have a dedicated space in your home or apartment where you sit down and do the work. You may have a word count that you need to hit every day, otherwise you don't do it. You may just, I just work for an hour, and what I write during that hour is what I write during that hour, and maybe I go back later and have to fix that. Everyone's got their own way of doing it, and you need to find that out for yourself. If you haven't done any writing before, that's something you need to do. A lot of people take an outline, write it out sort of more fleshed out, and then flesh out that outline, and then flesh out that outline until they've basically written the thing. Some people like to do things like create. I'm getting a lot of this, by the way, from. It happened last month. It was a program called RPG Workshop that was started. It was mostly people signed up who hadn't done much writing before, and it was sort of heading out to writing a 3,500 word one shot for like D&D Adventurers League, I think. But there was every week there's like here's some lessons. It was kind of like an online class, and some of this stuff is really good. It's like some people might get a big old whiteboard and start drawing up an outline, a map of some kind, a plot map or whatever. Some people might create like soundscapes on the with music that influences them or inspires them. Again, you have to find out what works for you. And that's going to take a little trial and error, I think. A lot of these things I've talked about are resources online about figuring out how you write, how you do the writing of the work. Unfortunately, I can't think of any websites, but I'm sure you can find them and figure out what you need to do. I've been talking a lot, so please, someone butt in.
There are other things you can do that come with cautions. One is finding a community of writers. Freelance Forge is one such community.
We did it.
Someone here named Kate Baker is someone who's worked with us a lot and is a big part of Freelance Forge in particular, and offered us some cards. Here, you're free to come up and grab, which is super generous and speaks to the community that they've built there. And there are other groups like that too. I know Adam Daigle, our longtime now managing developer on Pathfinder, he came up in a writing group that kind of banded together. The caution that comes with that is, we have a NDA built into the contracts that we send out. And if you talk to us, and say, is it cool if I talk? And often you'll be working with people who are on the same project as you, and so it's totally good and even helpful to talk with them about what you're working on and even have them look at it or whatever. But you want to clear that with developers first. You don't want to break NDAs. And then the other thing that you really have to be careful of is that your work is your work and not someone else's. Just not subcontracting, basically, not getting someone else to write. It does happen from time to time, but we don't have too much trouble with that.
Yeah.
And we'd like to continue not having
exactly whatever legal ramifications that might have.
Yeah,
we want
it just
to avoid them
gets
altogether.
really messy, and And obviously we can't use someone who basically lied to us.
Yeah, right.
Took
Again.
a contract and then had someone else do the writing and represented it as their own.
One of the big things that would definitely most likely get you blacklisted.
But again, that's not to say that, if, we have a lot of people whose spouses are, for instance, editors by profession. And so it's like, hey, can you look this over? And that's usually totally fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any other tips for doing the work of writing?
Doing the work of writing. So I think for me, every project is different. Every project I have to find the way that I will tackle it best. Some of those it will be in a mad flurry because boy, do I have a week to finish that project. Bad me. Some of them will be, finding a space where you can work. Space I find is really important. I generally can't do freelance from the same computer I do work from anymore. So if I do freelance, I will go out to a library or a coffee shop and sit and just plug away. And one of the most important things I can say for doing freelance, whether it's like medium or big assignments, is just put words down. Like you can move them around, you can shuffle them, but what you really want to avoid, and it's a trap that's easy to fall into, is staring at the screen for 2 to 3 hours and getting a paragraph. And that sounds like really like, how would that happen? But you can get distracted by like researching a lot of things. And research is certainly important, but you really want to get some core ideas down. You want to be able to do things like, hey, I'm going to fill in my stat blocks if you're doing an adventure. You want to be able to take the outline of something that we have done and really like review products we have done in the past and get that formatting. Luke could probably talk more about our formatting and styles, but that is a thing that I tend to do, where I will take an existing, usually when we send out a file, we will send out like a style document that tells you this is everything that you need to know about how to match the formats and styles we require. And I'll take that and I'll be like, okay, temporary header, text, just to fill in areas so I know where I have to go. Okay, in organized play, we have sidebars. It's like, where in the universe? Okay, make sure I've got that. Because if you get in that habit, then it's just filling in blanks, which can be really easy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's something you can do too, is before you even contact us, is look at it. If you know what our products look like, right? If you know what an alien write-up looks like, there's usually a stat block and text about how they live and where they live, and even often a line about how much they weigh and how long they are, which helps us make pawns of them later and order art that's to scale.
Is that what that's for?
I mean, that's one of the reasons, because
so
there's
funny.
just so many things. So if you want to write an alien and show it to us, publish it and show us your published alien, and we see that, it's like, okay, you understand some basics of our style, and you've like bolded the right parts of that, and it's all little bits that can add up to us feeling confident that you are ready to take on something like an actual assignment.
And if we're doing something in a product we have, and you maybe don't agree with it, there's probably a reason that we have something formatted some way, or there's a reason that every every alien starts off with a brief description including like how long it is and how much it weighs. That sort of thing. Like when you notice those trends, if you're wondering why it's there, feel free to ask, because we can usually provide some guidance on that, rather than just, this is dumb removed, and then when we get there, we're like, we need this for reasons. So.
The devs are all very great, and we'll answer all your questions, all your dumb questions that I have.
We will try, definitely try.
And one thing I think is universally loved is comments in Word files that you're turning over. Anything you're not sure of, especially anything that if you're referencing something that exists already, like you say, or referencing like something that was mentioned in a previous book that we made, put that in a comment. If you're inventing something that is not, like you mentioned, it's a planet that doesn't exist yet, and you're trying to add it to the canon, that's cool, but put it in a comment. Say, this is new, I invented this part. If you're not sure about a number, just say, I'm not sure about this number. Like, easy as that.
Or even if you're referencing obscure canon, that is like the best
100%.
for us, because it's like, oh, okay, you're referencing this thing that is mentioned in one paragraph in one book that maybe has like a different use of a term, so it's slightly off from when we would do like a control find for it. Like things like that can really save us time.
And that works for anything like small to medium, I would say. Bigger questions you want to get in touch, but we often don't have time to like go, talk about every single number, every single thing that you might have a question about, because there's a lot of unknowns when you're writing stuff. Even when we're writing stuff, we don't really know for sure how it's going to turn out. But that's part of our job is to develop that text and get it to the final place it needs to be.
I have a question. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When writing aliens, do you find it more useful to leave a comment with the vital stats in there, or?
That's something we should be asking for more often, and have been. I asked in the Alien Archive 3 outline for people to include that information.
The vital stats being like how long aliens live and how tall they usually are and how much they weigh and stuff like that. So
and that stuff, like in the core rulebook, we provided those stats for the core species, and then in Alien Archive 1, we didn't add that for our playable species. So then in Alien Archive 2, we caught up with that and have been doing it since. So, I mean, sometimes you'll notice, like, hey, you're not doing this thing, or you do this weird thing. It's like, oh yeah, whoops.
Exactly. Or if you notice some inconsistencies and stuff we've published in the past, it's because
you're paying attention.
You're paying attention better than us, and we are a bunch of people who are make our own mistakes and sometimes do stuff on on our own there. Okay, great. So you found your place to write, and you're writing in, and you're doing X number of words per day, you're getting an X number of hours in and whatnot. As you're writing, there's looking at what the outline wants you to do, and in larger products, you might be tasked with creating a bunch of stuff. Whether that be setting stuff or mechanic stuff and whatnot, and some things into something smaller. You get here's a monster, here's how they live, etc. Here's their stats, and that's kind of it. 500 words, you're good and done. But if you're writing an adventure or a scenario, or possibly even sort of a gazetteer of a place and whatnot, one thing I just want to hammer home is if you're making a bunch of setting stuff, you want to make sure that you are being inclusive. Starfinder is a big, wide galaxy, and we have lots of people and species in it. But we're definitely going to be looking at stuff like gender balance in between. If you have 8 NPCs in your adventure and they're all dudes, we're going to have to change that even before step 1, because we got to order art of them, and we don't want to order art of 8 dudes.
Or all the dudes are commanders and all the women are secretaries.
That sort of thing as well. So you want to keep an eye on that kind of stuff, and hopefully, as you have written some stuff earlier ahead of time, you've kind of maybe come across that and have thought about that. And if we see that you have done that in previous work you've published, that is also definitely points in your favor. There's something else about that I wanted to say, I feel like, but I can't.
Okay, that's okay.
Do you have any?
We forgive you.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just talking to talk now.
Well, that's too bad.
I'm sorry. I can't stand the silence. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Okay. Someone else talk about that for a second.
Good, it's good. Well, I have something that we've touched on a bit, but I want to kind of touch on as well, is something that is very important in this industry as a whole is communication, as we've talked about. But there are different types of communication beyond just, hey, you're emailing back and forth with your developer and getting answers to your question. The product is done. It's out there in the wild. Mm-hmm. How you communicate about that product is also very important. Mm-hmm. Because we have forums, there's social media, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, rule number 1, don't talk about your product if it hasn't been announced yet. We see in this industry a lot of not vague books on projects, and there are some limits, but what you don't want to do is break that NDA, first of all, obviously. Second of all, when something comes out, this industry is often very critical of new things and will post and talk about their critiques of things. You have to, as the author or the freelance writer for it, you have to kind of take those in stride a bit, especially when the developer has changed something and people don't like that. Because you do not want to put yourself in a position where you're going online and saying, well, my original turnover was so much better, because that will cause some resentment from our side, going like, hey, you kind of just threw us under a bus, maybe don't do that. And that does happen from time to time. And just a reminder to everyone, be very aware when you're communicating in an online forum, because again, it's all public, people can see, especially on forums and social media.
And in person, honestly, with
absolutely.
other people everybody talks to each other. It's not because everyone talks to each other. Just the thing I think that helps a lot with that is realizing that there's so many reasons we change things, like a billion reasons. Like you might have written the coolest thing ever, but we just sent something to the printer that is exactly that same thing, and we can't just reprint it, in your form. So we have to cut it. We cut things we love all the time. There's no space, we got the word count wrong, and so now we have to cut 2 pages from or the art came in with somebody spreading their arms and holding tridents and having like 8 tentacles, and that's like 500 fewer words than we thought we would have on that page.
Many of these are things Jason has messaged me about recently.
Oh, yes, a little bit of feedback.
Darn tridents.
Yeah, and I mean, you can always ask, right? Like if you get the final product and you're like, oh, it's a tricky thing to ask, like, why do you hate my cool stuff? But I'm always happy to talk about it, and there really are tons and tons of reasons, and keeping in mind that you are the freelance writer and author, but there are at least like 4 or 5 people that are gonna work on that writing before it gets published, and that doesn't count like the executive team that looks at the approval, like we print out the book so that everyone can flip through it and make sure that they all like every little bit of it that they care about. So there's a lot of people involved, and you're a very important part of the process, but you're part of a process, and that's the thing that you keep that in mind. I think you're better set up to not feel too bad when things change that you are particularly attached to.
Happens to all of us.
Yep.
Even us up here.
Absolutely.
If your developer isn't super busy, which is almost but I know personally I try to give feedback for very large things like adventures and some articles. For like a monster, if you turn it in and you like it and you ask and I like it and it gets printed, but something gets changed and later on you see and you ask, I'll answer. But maybe before that, if you're lucky, I have given you some feedback and I did this and here's what's going on here, and I think you could have done this a little better. This was awesome. So hope that's something that you, again, to talk about the communication, we try to communicate with you as much as we can, but again, say we're very busy, and if it takes time to get that feedback, it's going to take that time, and please be patient with us in that sense.
So okay, you did an assignment.
You did an assignment.
Then you don't hear anything for 6 months. What does that mean?
What does it mean? It may mean that we're really busy. Maybe then we don't have anything to do. Anything for you to do. Sorry. Oh boy. We got plenty to do.
Staring at the wall.
Chicken. Not chicken. Chicken
Turkey,
and a biscuit.
Turkey.
Ham. Okay, so be sure to
ham
just
is right.
Ham is right. Send us a quick email. I mean, like, hey, I finished this. I hope you liked it. You got anything else along that lines? I'm free from X date to this date. Or I just finished this other freelance project over there with Wizards or something like that, and I've got some extra room. Got anything for me? And we'll let you know. Hey, we might not. And if we don't, we'll put you on a list. And it's
a good list.
A good list. Yeah, we'll put you on the list. We'll put you on a list for something, or ask around the office. Hey, this person did really great. You got anything for them?
At PaizoCon, our company convention we run in Washington State, we had some meetups with some freelancers and developers, and we talked about what is and everyone kind of agreed that like about once a month is totally reasonable to check in and say I'm available or I'm not, or you got anything. And it'll vary from person to person. You can always ask the person you're emailing, like, hey, is once a month checking in okay? Like, that's fine. Yeah. And for my part, when I get those emails, I try to say, like, whether or not I have anything right then, and if I anticipate. It's like, if I know I'm not going to be assigning anything for a few months, I'll just say that to save you the trouble of
checking in every
month
for those months. Yeah.
And us not getting right back to you. Again, just like there's so many things to keep in mind when developing text, there's a billion things to keep in mind when assigning things, and trying to find the right people for the right assignment is
exactly.
It's fun. It's a puzzle, but there's just a lot of considerations, and it doesn't mean anything about you as a person.
Right. We might have a specific life experience in mind that we want to have that person work on this thing, like what Thirsty was talking about earlier. So yeah, we want to make sure our products are awesome for everybody. So that's one of the things Joe's talking about there.
And something important to us on the Starfinder team, especially, is just inclusivity in the author pool. Like making sure that people see names and authors that they recognize. That that's not exactly what I mean, but that, seeing themselves doing the work that
they can relate to, basically.
Yeah. It's for everyone and hopefully by everyone at some point.
At some point,
Because we got a long way to go in this industry.
That's true.
It's easy to see that. So,
I'll take a brief step back. One of the things when we talk about communication and talking about sending us, asking us questions, hopefully you'll have our Paizo emails. You might know us on Twitter or Facebook. That's our sort of often our personal thing. Don't send us a public tweet that's like, I need some work. You got anything? Because that kind of reflects sort of unprofessionally on you. And often, our Twitters are, for me, most of my Twitter is pictures of my dog. So, it's not necessarily a place I'm going to be doing business. What?
It's true. It is pictures of his dog.
I'm doing great. Does anyone have any sort of wrap ups? Because we're getting to a point where we start taking cues and giving some A's.
Totally. Let's take some cues.
All right.
Take some Q's and A's.
So please come on up to the microphone. You are going to be on Twitch, so if you hate the sound of your voice being broadcast over the internet, sorry. You want your question out there, you got to ask it. This has got to be bold. And do it.
If there are any experienced writers in the room who don't necessarily have a question but want us to address something that we maybe left out that would be useful to other new writers, we're happy to hear from that.
Jump on that grenade. Good job.
Yeah, always get that first one.
I just want to say, first of all, for last night, you guys put on a show, or the big event, and it was so much fun. Your reading was excellent. The voices, we all had a blast.
Great.
I might have missed this, but how about your submission process? Do you have open submissions at certain times?
Right. So we don't. The open submissions are usually just like stuff you've created, right? And we would take that and do something with it. We generally don't do that. There is sometimes an open call in society.
In organized play, we sometimes have open calls. We've not had any for Starfinder Society yet, and it's been a while since we've done it for Pathfinder Society, but that is something we are always looking to find a way to bring back. And if it does come back in one form or another, then that would be one vector to get in. But generally, we don't have or haven't had anything for the Starfinder side as far as an open call.
Yeah, we don't really have the time and the capacity to be able to read through lots of open submissions and find out the person. But if you've written something and you think it's really awesome, again, take it to a third-party publisher, try to self-publish it, do something like that, and then show it to us there, because that becomes your resume instead of a submission.
Yeah, we've talked internally about open submissions and even set up some preliminary plans, and then we released the second edition of Pathfinder and the playtest. So I remember very clearly that getting kind of backburnered for a minute. Yeah,
we love P2.
Thanks.
We're very happy with it.
So you wanted trolling questions from existing writers? Is that what you're asking?
Fair enough. Sure.
So in Save the Rent Crota, there's a sidebar on page 12 that breaks a stat block, and I was wondering why you did that. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure.
Got my back.
All right. So my question is kind of a two-part thing. So like I went to school for monetary gain, not kind of passionate thing, and I kind of found this to be what I'm into a little bit later. I have several things written down, none of them published. I've never approached a third party. I've never done anything of this sort, but I am trying to gung-ho into this. So the self-publishing thing is kind of where I've been going with. Is there anything you would suggest where I would start? I mean, I know you heard blogs and stuff like that, but any more like professional things to kind of go into, like software, websites, anything of the sort?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I swear the name of it is Scrivener. Scribus. Yes, that is a sort of an open source like layout design type of situation where you would put your text and put it in a nice font, maybe put a little bit of art next to it, and then turn it into a PDF. Right.
Okay.
And that would be something that you can, once you have if you're doing that and you want to sell it, then you can you want to put the OGL on there, right? So it's nice and legal, and then you can actually make a buck or two off of it or something like that, and then you can put that on something like DriveThruRPG. I've put my own stuff on DriveThruRPG before in the past, and It used to be very easy. I hope it still is. It's been a while. In terms of other sort of specific third parties, does anyone have a Starfinder third party that they really, really like, that they know of? I know that like Alex Agunas but he usually does everything himself and that. But
I mean, Rogue Genius Games, Legendary Games does Starfinder material.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an area that's growing. One that I will go back to and mention again is Wayfinder is an excellent way to get into the writing community, because it is something that does that open call that was asked earlier, but it's done on a fan submission basis, and then once you get something in there, you can definitely cite that when you email us. And it not only shows that you are like able to write something and submit it and go through that whole process, but it also kind of shows us that you're someone who's passionate about our setting and what we work on, because that is an entirely fan-run product. So it shows that there is some passion there as well.
Yeah, and they're again, groups like Freelance Forge, they'll have contests and things that you can submit to, and it's not published per se, but it's public and out there, and something you can point to and say, So that's in terms of getting the ball rolling.
So I have a question from Twitch, but I lost my chat log, so I'm gonna try to just do my best with it. Do you have a preference when writing on what kind of race is shown? Does it need to be a core rulebook race? Can it be a legacy race?
I see. It's all going to depend on the specific product that you're working on. Our core species are our core species sort of for a reason. We want to. They're the most populous, basically. But if you're writing something that's going to take place on a weird far off planet, obviously it's going to be populated by something that we maybe haven't seen yet, and maybe that is also something you're writing in the Alien Archive, or we're talking about all of the elves of Castrovel had not only went to Galarian long ago, but they also went to this third planet that you never heard of, and it's of course going to be populated with elves. So it all depends on what you're writing specifically. When I'm doing adventures, I like to kind of see a mix for the most part, because when you human, it gets a little boring.
One of the things we do in Starfinder is go for the cantina thing, where you just have a bunch of weird aliens flying around in a spaceship doing weird things together.
Cantina music immediately stuck in my head.
What's that?
Sorry.
Yes. Can we do that? Like, we can do 8 seconds of that, right?
Yeah, that was it. That was all we can do.
All right.
That's it.
Well, I keep quoting this stat, but it's because it's cool. With Alien Archive 3, which comes out this month, we'll have more than 100 playable species in Starfinder, so there's plenty to choose from.
Including psychedelic walrus people. I mean, we've got everything.
We got everything. We have time for a couple more questions. Anybody else?
Accusations?
No. I'm good. Prepared for that right now. Anyone have any anecdotes here on the table?
Not a single anecdote among us.
Not a single anecdote.
Apparently. So Lou, you have done a fair amount of freelance at this point. Is there anything that when you were starting out you were confused about or wondering about that? Yeah, you're on the spot now. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Opening up my notes.
I'm
or just
not
something
sure.
that as an editor you might have learned about the process that you wouldn't have realized otherwise.
I don't know.
That's cool. For my first assignment for Pathfinder First Edition, I noticed that I did a couple articles, and one went through completely almost untouched, it seemed, and then the other was totally changed. And I was like, I'm the worst. That was before I understood that there are a billion reasons to change things. Right. And even different developers, some of them will change a thing they think is good just to change it. That's not that common, but they have a vision and they
there's a certain
exactly, and that's not a bad thing either. It's just a thing that happens.
That's just how we do. No questions from Twitch. You all know everything there's to know about writing for Starfinder.
Wow.
Well, we just told them. We just told them all. Yeah.
Good job. Good job, us.
Going back to being inclusive, not just gender, right? Everything. Look at your writing very carefully. Pay someone with a different life experience to take them out for offer this to them, and if they accept to do this, but take them out for coffee and get their feedback on stuff. We use sensitivity readers pretty often too when we can. It's always better to figure that stuff out early than to realize you've kind of stepped in it and have to unstep.
and playtesting is an important part too. At least for like adventure sides. I mean, if you can arrange to playtest, especially encounters that as you're designing them, you're kind of going, oh, is this a bit too far? Is this maybe a bit weird? Not that anyone would ever write like weird encounters, but it's one of those situations where you want to get that input in, and if you're worried about NDAs and breaking those, in a lot of cases, we will, in the outline we assign you, mention that it is okay to playtest something. Just maybe don't tell them it's going to be for this book that's coming out here. No, I'm writing for a project. I'd like to test out this thing. Perfectly fine.
And we've touched on this several times, but I'll just repeat it because it is the most important thing: communication. Yeah. And that includes, we talked about like know beforehand what you can take on, and that's hard when you're starting out. You don't necessarily know like what is 3,000 words. Does anyone know how long that takes them? Like, yeah, eventually you do, but it takes time to learn that. But during the process, things happen in life, and most of us are extremely understanding of that because things happen to us in our lives. And so, asking for extensions is totally a thing. The earlier the better. Like, or even saying like, there's this thing, I didn't realize I was going to have to do this for my job. Like, I'm going to be gone for a weekend, and I didn't factor that in. Is there any flexibility? And we'll tell you whether there is or not. And sometimes it's better for us to get fewer words from you and deal with that than to push the deadline. There's just so many moving parts that it's just the earlier and more clear you are with us.
That is a good
earlier
sentence.
You are more with us to be
good,
better, good.
Former editor,
we
everybody.
We're all paid for our words.
Yes, and that's how you write.
You
have a question?
We have another question from Twitch. Rax333 asks, when writing, must it conform to rules as written, or can it expand beyond the raw, say for advanced starship creation or vehicle creation?
Well, sometimes we'll be asking you to write more rules to be as written. We wanted you to, stick with what we've got in the book. And sometimes, but if you're not sure, you can ask if this check the fact first, I would say. Make sure we didn't mess something up and are replacing it, and that's the way we actually wanted it. It's just as written, it doesn't quite work the way we thought it did. So check the fact, ask your developer, and then if you're changing something to be for a very specific reason, you gotta let us know that too.
And rules as written, there's two different sides of that. There's rules as written as like, I don't like how the deadly aim feat works, so for this adventure, I'm putting in a sidebar that says it works differently. No, don't do that. However, if it's something like you're designing a starship and you want to give that starship a cool, unique ability, then that usually that conforms to the story that you want to tell. Then usually we can make that work a lot better than the like sidebar of I just don't want to use this type of rule. Or what I often get for organized play is skills and the use of skills, especially some of the common ones like diplomacy or acrobatics, or make sure to read those. A lot of times people will just be like, make a skill check at this number and you can do the thing, and then the core rule book might countermand them. Be sure to read that stuff as well. That's where rules as written can be pretty important.
And we do try to set you up for success, and the outline will tell you, especially if we know if there's a common pitfall or whatever, look at these pages of this book for these rules. And anytime you're working with rules, you want to look at the core rule book for those rules, or the first place any of those rules appeared, just to get a sense of what's been done with them and what we're trying to do with them.
Cool. All right. You have a question?
Yeah. I know this is kind of a writing thing, and my question's probably not necessarily pertaining to that. But I've done some playtesting for like video games and stuff like that. Do you have any room for like necessarily playtesters or anything like that can kind of get their foot in the door, but not really necessarily writers yet?
Yes.
Yes, meaning no.
Yeah, maybe. Promise I acknowledge
yeah.
Not really. So, when we have done sort of public playtesting, obviously we put it out with the new classes for common coming out. We put that out in the world, and then we ask you to do the work for us and send it back
with
us to do that work, and then we'll incorporate it, and you get the job satisfaction knowing that you helped out to make it better. But we don't have any sort of like I know, John. shut up. We don't have any sort of like position or paying position where we would like, hey, playtest this adventure for us, or playtest this game mechanic for us. Unfortunately,
yeah, especially if full-time employees, we just have to do a lot of different things all at once.
Right.
So,
Sometimes we might have to end up doing that on the clock
Oh,
just
yeah,
to
yeah,
test something.
for sure.
So it falls on us. So sorry. You have a question?
Yes. Yes, I was wondering, I would like to create a story using Pathfinder and Starfinder characters, locations, and so forth. I was wondering how can I get that published without getting into any trouble because of licensing fees and so forth.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's a very good question. We have no, I forgot what it's called.
So Paizo, if you go to the Paizo's website, there's a licensing page, and that'll explain what you need to do depending on whether you want to sell the product or just put it out in the world.
Well, I want to put it out in the world, like in a magazine or maybe a novel that you guys can sell.
And that so that would then, it's kind of what we're going back to talking about third parties, things like Wayfinder,
So like Wayfinder, okay.
yeah, and they are set up to do that because they've read the licensing page and know what they can print and how to print it.
Because not like the fanboys where they use all the characters from your storylines. These are brand new characters just using like planets and races.
Yeah. There's a lot of what it's called open content, and we spell that out in a lot of our books what it is. Most of the time, it's anything that has a capital letter is often considered open.
Yeah, like the first word of every sentence.
Yes, the first word. But
proper nouns.
Proper nouns. Thank you. Grammar. And that sort of thing is protected. But we often will say, like, for instance, you're not allowed to say the drift in a product that you would sell that you publish on your own, but you can call it hyperspace, and that's what everyone knows what you mean by that. If you wanted to play that in Starfinder, yeah.
And we have two different important things to know about there is, the open game license that allows third-party publishers to exist, and there's a whole set of rules like Jason was just talking about, like with the drift and hyperspace. There's another tool we have called the community use, which you can find on our website. That's for if you want to get something out there and you're not making money off of it. And then we allow you to use more of our IP. So if you're looking to do like a story in our setting, something like that, that would fall more under the community use. You couldn't make money off of it or sell it per se, but you could use that community use license to do that. And all that information is on Paizo.com. But generally, anything that would be like selling a book for our company, we'd be the ones who would be deciding, when we're selling a book. Even some of the authors we've used in like our old novels line, generally speaking, we were reaching out to people and having them write to spec. We wouldn't do like an open call or anything like that for those type of projects.
I think we have time for one more question.
What level of understanding of the Starfinder lore do you expect from the freelancers you work for? And as the number of products in the Starfinder line increase, what do you expect, and how do you work with freelancers to help them understand what they need to know?
Yeah, we have a lot of books, and we don't have them all memorized ourselves. So we have them in a big stack on our desks, right? And if we ever need to look something up, we check it. So when we ask you to write something for us, we'll let you know what part of the lore you might need to know the most. Like what Joe was saying earlier, we set you up for success. Read this part of the Pack World, pages X to X. It's going to be, and then expand upon that. And then in that process, when you get a contract from us, we'll also, if you need that PDF, you don't own that PDF already, we give you that PDF. So you don't have to spend your own money on that, because we need you to help us make more money elsewhere. And indeed, so we'll give you those, we'll give you what you need. And if there's something you've maybe heard about or think you need, you let us know, and then we'll see if we can get you that PDF as well, if it's not in the outline itself.
And how we often do, just so you can understand, is coming in and getting a project from us. We create a document that's called an outline. We send the outline to you. That's detailing everything you're expected to do for us. But in those outlines, for example, for a Starfinder Society scenario, I will provide adventure background that details, like, this is the history of everything leading up to what you're going to be writing. Hey, this is the adventure you're going to write. These are all the high points you need to hit. And then at the end of that, I'll include some additional resources, which would then point to those products and say, okay, Pack World, read this section to update yourself. Generally speaking, at least for the products I work on with Starfinder Society, the outline should be enough that someone who has a basic familiarity with our setting, as in, like, what our core races are, and you've maybe like read most of the core rule book stuff. anyone with that kind of understanding can go forth and conquer. And then any of the sort of more specific parts of the lore, that's when we will drill in with those, additional resources to look over. This also goes back to comments, and when you're writing, if you put in comments that note that like you've pulled something obscure while you're writing, that then helps us because we don't know everything.
The setting chapter of the core book is not that big, really. You can read through that, and I don't expect people to know much of anything because again, we provide what you need to know for a specific assignment. But it is nice if you have something you're interested in. Like it's nice to hear about what your because we all have preferences. We all have favorite places and species and all kinds of stuff. So it makes us feel more like you're interested in writing for Starfinder rather than writing anything like please anything, which is legit too. But
fair enough. Yeah. All right, and that is yes. You have one more thing, Joe.
You have this big pile of business cards.
Yes, indeed. Please come get business cards for us from us.
Yeah, and I'll say take advantage of this offer to get in touch with Freelance Forge because that's pretty cool.
And that is why writing for Starfinder is like as fun as being in the circus. And that's why we had that slide up the whole time, you guys.
This was relevant the entire time. Surprise!
So thank you all for coming out, listening to us, and be punchy. And hopefully you got some good information out of it. Again, please come get some business cards and maybe talk to us for a little bit. I'm gonna go back there though, and have
your pile here.
Yeah, I got my pile. So please help yourself. Thank you so much.